Okay, this is kind of a review of your quiz for those of you who need some extra help for the test. Um, some of you are going to have to do this handout um, review, additional one that looks very similar to this. So I want to kind of go over this. This one hopefully is pretty simple. You're going to take the percentage and don't forget that you have to move your decimal over two places. So if it's 3%, you move it once to the right, that goes in front of the 3, and then again you've got a 0. So, and then you're going to multiply that times 449, and that is going to give you $13.47. That one should be fairly easy. This one here, once again, the state tax, this is your total purchase that you have. So you have to pay taxes on this amount. So for your city or your state sales tax, we're going to pay 6% of the $68, and that's going to equal $4.08. Your city sales tax up here, 1.5%. So we have to move our decimal place over 2. So before the 1 is once, we got to add a 0. We're going to multiply that times the $68, and that's going to give us $1.02. Make sure that you are rounding. You need to round correctly. And then the next thing it tells you is that $19 of this $19 are goods that are part of this. But because there's an excise tax, whether it's tobacco or alcohol or whatever it is that they've decided to put the excise tax, you have to pay an additional tax on just those items. And so you're going to, once again, move your decimal place over to 0.015 times $19. And that's going to be 29 cents. And so to get the total bill, you have to include the $68 because that is what you've bought. These are just your taxes. So it's going to be your $68 plus your $4.08 plus, oops, that should be a plus sign, plus $1.02 plus 29 cents. So your total bill is actually going to be $73.39. So down here we have to look at the tax table, and this is telling us that we are going to combine the incomes of Mr. and Mrs. Brown, or we can file separately. So if they combine their incomes, 95,000 plus 49,000 equals $144,000. So jointly their incomes are $144,000. You have to come down here to the tax bracket. So does 144 fall between these two, these two, these two, these two, or these two? Obviously, 144,000 if your income is at least 60,000 and not more than 150. So that 144 falls there, and so it's the 35%. So we're going to take 144,000. Multiply that times 0.35. We've moved our decimal place twice, and so that gives us $50,400 that if they file jointly, they're going to have to pay. If they file separately, I'm going to do this so our line doesn't go down to the next one, he would pay only on the 95,000. So 95,000 come down here once again. That falls between these two, so it's going to be 95,000 times our 0.35, and that's going to give us 33,250. And if she could file separately on her 49,000, 49,000 falls between these, so she only owes 27%. So her 49,000 times 0.27, and so, whoops, we're going to only owe, why does I keep doing that? That is $13,230. So if we add those two numbers up, the $13,230 that she would have owed and the $33,250 that she would owe, their total is $46,480. So we can see that by filing separately, they would owe less money, but they're not allowed to do that. So they are actually penalized, and that's the marriage penalty. So we're going to take this number and actually subtract those two. And so the difference between those is $3,920. So that's, a marriage penalty. Down here, once again, not too difficult. This is how much she earns. This is how much she spends on things that she has to pay the 6% tax. So we're going to take our 6% tax, we're going to multiply that times the 3,000, and that's going to give us $180 that she owes in that particular tax. So to calculate the effective tax rate, it's tax divided by income. So if she paid $180 in the tax, we're going to divide that by her income, which is $8,000. So her effective tax rate is 2.25%. So even though, and once again, you have to move the decimal places because it's going to be over 2, your answer. To get percent, you need to move it back 2. So even though this is how much she made, she only spent $3,000 on taxable goods. So that's what you're going to take the 6%. You're going to get the dollar amount in taxes, take that divided by her income, and that will give you her effective tax rate. So everybody's paying 6% in sales tax on whatever they buy, but what they're not doing is paying 6% of their income. And this is the same thing. We've already done the math to calculate the tax, so all you really have to do is take the tax. You're paying $20,000 in all of your taxes. You made $45,000, and so your effective tax rate for all of them is 44.4%. Once again, you're going to have to move the decimal place over 2 because this is a percentage. All right, calculating Social Security tax. You are paying 12% of the first $102,000. Once again, we could do this. We could take $15,000 times 12%, and that would actually be, let me get this, 15,000 times 12% is going to be $1,800. If you divide that by 15,000, you're going to get 12%. So anything below 102,000 is going to be 12%. You could take 102,000, multiply that times 12%, and then divide it by 102,000. It's just going to come right back and give you 12%. So what would the effective tax rate for anything 102 below? It's going to be 12%. That's your answer for everything below that. So this is where we have to actually calculate that. So if we come up here and we take to see how much our total, if we are above 102,000, the maximum anybody is going to pay that year for Social Security, making over that amount, is 12% times 102,000, and that's going to give you your top number, which looks like is $12,240. So if you make $2,000, this is still how much they're going to take out because they're going to quit taking out after that. If you make that amount, it doesn't matter. This is your top number. This is the tax because they quit taking it out at that amount. So for this, we're going to take the $12,240 divided by 200,000. And that's going to give you 6.12% after you move your decimal. Down here, same thing, 12,240 divided by your income. And that's going to give you 3.26%. Here, same thing, they quit taking it out after 102,000, so they took out that much. You made 700,000, so your effective tax rate is going to be 1.75%. And down here, they quit taking out at 102, so you paid in 12,240 divided by 950,000, and your effective tax is 1.29%. So we can see here that it's proportional. Everyone pays 12% up to 102,000, and then the more you make, the less you pay percentage-wise, so it becomes regressive. Federal income tax, we can look back up here at the chart. This is a federal income tax chart. The more you make, the higher their percentage. So it is a progressive tax. Sales tax. If you and I bought the same goods, I would pay a lower percentage of my income, just like we looked up here. Just because the sales tax is 6%, she only paid 2.25%. Her income was $8,000. If you took my income, that number would be a lot less. So the more you make, the less you pay. So that is a regressive tax. Excise tax, same thing. If you're buying gas, if you're buying tobacco, if you're buying alcohol, the more money you make, the less percentage of your income goes to that particular tax. We just looked at Social Security, and I just explained that. It's proportional till you get to this point, and then it becomes regressive. Because of that, some people would say that it is entirely regressive, but I like for you to be able to see that it's proportional. Can't type and talk. Proportional till the cap then becomes regressive. Get rid of some of my lines here. Okay, flat tax. Everyone pays the same percentage, so it is going to be proportional. And then a property tax, we really didn't talk about that, so I didn't mark that off on your quiz if you didn't understand that. But a property tax, once again, it depends on how much income you have. You know, two people could have two different properties. Their property taxes are exactly the same, but because one has a higher income, it is a regressive tax.